Welcome to Wisco Legacy. I'm your host, Corey Kundert. On Wisco Legacy, we talk to inspiring Wisconsinites to hear all about their life's journey. Today we have Larry Jackson. Larry is the founder and president of the Ben Jackson Foundation. He started this foundation back in 2018 after he tragically lost his son, Ben. Ben served in the United States Air Force. He was stationed over in Japan and tragically lost his life on base over there. From that, Larry and his family and friends created the Ben Jackson Foundation. And what the Ben Jackson Foundation does is it helps newly enlisted military members come back home to see their family. The Jackson family had a really special opportunity about 7 weeks prior to Ben's passing, where Ben came home. Larry actually helped him get his flight home and surprised his family, and just had a really great last week there. And then about 6 or 7 weeks later is when Ben passed away. And so what the foundation does is try and create those opportunities for newly enlisted military members and their families, and they've made such an impact. You'll see later on in the episode how much impact that the Ben Jackson Foundation has made since its inception about 3.5 years ago. And with all that, let's dive on into episode 20 of Wisco Legacy with Larry Jackson, president and founder of the Ben Jackson Foundation.
Hi, my name is Larry Jackson, and I'm the president and co-founder of the Ben Jackson Foundation, and this is my Wisco Legacy.
Larry, welcome to Wisco Legacy.
Thanks very much, Corey. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, Larry, you grew up in a multi-generational military family. You were part of the military as well. Can you talk about joining the military and talk about that multi-generational military family you come from?
Yeah, sure. My dad was in the Navy. He did 26 years and retired from the Navy, and that was really my first introduction to the military. He was serving on active duty as a recruiter, and then when I was growing up, he actually was stationed. We moved around a bit, right? So I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because that's where he was stationed. Then we moved to San Diego, and then finally to Wisconsin, really where I grew up, all the way through college. So he was in the Navy, and when I was 10 years old, he had this. He asked me if I wanted to do what's called a Tiger Cruise. So a Tiger Cruise is basically somebody on the ship. They're able to invite someone to come out to the ship with them and spend some time on the ship. So, for example, in 1980, he was gone for 6 months in the Pacific on a deployment. So he invited me and my uncle and my cousin to come out to fly out to Pearl Harbor and meet the ship in Hawaii, and then sail back to San Diego with him. So I got to spend a week on a real live Navy ship out at sea. And I think from that point on, that's what I knew I wanted to do.
What an incredible experience.
Yeah. And
probably a lot of memories.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the multi-generational family, my uncle that came with, he was just one of the people in my family to be in the military. He was actually a second lieutenant in the Army, and was at Normandy the day after D-Day. So at that time he was retired, and he took his son and myself and went on that trip, which he really loved. And really, if it hadn't have been for my Uncle Joe, I don't think I would have been able to make that trip. So that definitely left a lasting impression on me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's fast forward a bit. When did you enter in the military? So
I graduated high school in 1988. And then I was really, because of, my dad being in the Navy, really interested in going in. He suggested that I look at ROTC program. So I applied for an ROTC college scholarship to be commissioned as an officer in the Navy. I got a 3-year scholarship. So I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee. And after going through ROTC for 4 years, I got commissioned into the Navy active duty in May of 1992.
Wow. Yeah, the ROTC programs are an incredible program. You find them in a lot of universities, and it's a really great pipeline for the military. You talk about your experience in the ROTC?
You know, it's one of those things where it's like from age 10 to age, 18 when I started, I had really looked forward to getting into the Navy specifically. So I was very, very gung ho about all of that, so I got there and, I tried to put as much effort into, things as I could. I tried to do the extracurriculars. I was on the drill team. Most of my friends were also ROTC. I tended to just hang out with the other military, people. So got to go on some pretty cool things. Like we went to Mardi Gras a couple times for drill tournaments, took a bus from Milwaukee down to New Orleans. During the summer, I got to do these, summer cruises. So I did a 4-week cruise on the USS Wainwright in 1989. Got to actually go to Guantanamo Bay, which I thought was pretty cool, for a day. I think it went to McDonald's there. That was my biggest memory of that. And then between sophomore and junior year, I got to experience all the different parts of the Navy and a little bit of the Marines. So I spent a week with an aviation unit, a week with submarines, a week learning about the surface Navy, and then a week learning about the Marine Corps. And then before my senior year, I got to spend 2 months on a nuclear submarine for my summer. So that's where I turned 21. Not the typical 21st birthday party that most people in Wisconsin have, I guess. But yeah, those are really great experiences that I remember, especially the 2 months on the submarine. Really learned a lot and was really, really awesome.
Yeah, sounds like an incredible experience. So you said you were active duty after college there?
Yep. So graduated from Marquette and got commissioned about a day apart. And then I went to Naval Nuclear Power School in Orlando, Florida. So I went through 6 months at Nuclear Power School learning to run Navy nuclear reactor power plants, or learning about the theory of them, really. And then after my time in Orlando, so that would have been about January 93, I moved to Idaho Falls, Idaho. And they have this huge, out in the middle of the desert, this huge Department of Energy site where they built back in the day all the old first reactor prototypes, far away from any civilization at all. So I was there 6 months. Every day a bus would come, make the rounds, pick us up, because you weren't allowed to drive out there. We spent an hour going out to this place, doing a 12-hour shift and learning a lot of hands-on application or hands-on training of nuclear reactors. And then came back and did that for 7 days, and then had a day off, and then did rotating shifts. So sometimes I was on days, sometimes swings, sometimes nights. But definitely glad I didn't have to drive home after those, because I was pretty tired.
Oh, I could imagine. All right. So you, how long were you in the military?
So I got out in, I think, October of 1997. Okay. So I got to my first ship in 1994. My wife Jen and I got to Virginia in 94. Then I flew out to Naples, Italy, and met my first ship there. Spent about 4 months in the Mediterranean during the Bosnian conflict, where my ship was part of a NATO task force tasked with stopping and searching other ships coming into the theater to make sure they weren't carrying contraband or weapons in or out. So did that on the USS Bainbridge, and then decommissioned that ship, and then went to the aircraft carrier USS George Washington. At the time, it was a 4-year-old ship. Now it's much, much older. So was on that ship for about another year and a half. And then while I was in the Navy, had my 2 oldest kids, Emma and Ben, and then was able to get out right as that ship was going on a 6-month deployment, and then moved back to Wisconsin after that.
Nice. If you were to talk or kind of wrap up your military career and your experience in the military, what were some of the most beneficial parts of being in the military? The most rewarding pieces of it?
I would say the most rewarding thing was just the people that I met. I mean, really coming from Wisconsin, it's funny. When I was growing up, I always wanted to get out of Wisconsin, and then I did. And then I realized, wow, Wisconsin's pretty awesome, actually. So that's why I moved back. But just getting out of Wisconsin and meeting other people that weren't like me, that came from different backgrounds, different cultures, going overseas, seeing a lot of different countries, seeing the good and the bad that there is outside of the United States, and just meeting so many different people. It really kind of changes your perspective on the world. And I just have made some really, really great friends in the military. So, that's what I remember the most. Definitely shaped who I am and continues to, stick with me today.
Yeah. Big part of your life. So you mentioned you had 2 children. I believe you have a 3rd child as well. Yep.
After we got back to Wisconsin, then my 3rd, Matthew, was born in 1999 in Sheboygan.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. Can you talk a bit about your family? So you have 3 kids, you have a wife. I believe you moved eventually down to New Glarus, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So I got out of the Navy. First family wise, married, been married just about, it'll be 30 years next year. So married to my wife, Jen. And then we have 3 kids, Emma, Ben, and Matthew. And right now, Emma's a nurse in Milwaukee. She works in a cardiovascular ICU. And then Matthew is finishing up his senior year at UW Milwaukee, where he's in the film program.
Nice. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. And your son, Ben, also joined the military. He was, I believe, in the Air Force. Yep. Can you talk about him getting into the military and following that family tradition?
Yeah, he didn't really know, as he was kind of approaching the end of his high school career, what exactly he wanted to do. So he knew that he really didn't want to go to college. And then we talked to him about looking at the different branches of the military. So my wife actually took him down to the recruiter. He actually really always liked airplanes. So I think, we thought maybe the Air Force or the Navy would be a good fit. He was also really interested in snowboarding. So there's far more places in the Air Force that you can snowboard than there are in the Navy. So he was starting to look at the Air Force, talk to the recruiter. My wife, Jen, actually took him on a trip out to visit the Air Force Academy at one point in Colorado, which he was interested in checking out because Colorado snowboarding seemed like a good fit. So he went out there and decided, didn't really want to go to college, but was definitely interested in the Air Force. He went through the test. He took the ASVAB, and the Air Force basically came back and said, you can pretty much do whatever you want. So what do you want to do? So his top choice was, he wanted to do aerospace propulsion, which is essentially working on jet engines. So That's what he did in the Air Force. Wow,
that's awesome. Can you talk a bit, I'm going to rewind just a little bit, talk about Ben growing up and what he was into and what kind of kid he was?
Yeah, so things he was interested in. He was, he played football in middle school. He got into baseball. Once he got towards high school, he switched from football to cross country. So he did cross country all 4 years in high school. He did baseball 3 years in high school, and then his senior year switched over to play golf his final year. So what kind of a kid was he? He was always really thoughtful, and a bit of a bit of a perfectionist. There was one memory we have of him when he was quite young. I want to say around 5, and my wife was talking to him about, what does he want to do? What does he want to be? And she said, you could even be, you'd be a good doctor. You'd make a good doctor. And he said, no, I couldn't be a doctor. Like, because what would happen if I made a mistake and somebody got hurt? So he was always very much of a perfectionist. And I think, I think that kind of attitude, I think he probably had, I never talked to him about it, but I think he probably had that attitude when he was working on, in the Air Force, working on engines and thinking about, he's got to keep those pilots safe and make sure that engine's going to work. So yeah, he was just always so smart. He never thought he was smart. He would never call himself that. He really didn't think he was, but just the way his brain worked, it was just like on a whole nother level. He was always building things like with woodworking. He built a longboard that he, cut all the individual pieces of wood. He built the mold, glued it together to shape it. I remember one time he was trying to explain to me how a transmission works in a car. I just could not understand what he was telling. He got it, of course, and I worked on nuclear reactors for 5 years, and I couldn't understand how a transmission worked, but he was able to figure it out just by watching like a couple of videos, and then he just instantly got it.
Wow.
So yeah, that was him growing up. Just always really concerned about other people, and that really kind of transitioned or just went with him as he got into the Air Force too, as we learned about later.
Yeah. So he was in the Air Force, and he got stationed in Japan. Is that correct? Yeah.
So he got through basic training in San Antonio, Texas, and then he went to his tech school in Wichita Falls, Texas. And then he was stationed in Misawa, Japan, which is a base up towards the northern part of Japan. So he went to Japan in February of 2017.
Okay. And I know one of the main reason or service you provide through the Ben Jackson Foundation, we'll talk a bit more about this later, is helping newly enlisted military members come home. And I know early on that is a huge challenge for early enlisted military members. They don't get quite as much money. It's probably a pretty expensive trip home from a place like Japan. And so I know Ben had that same challenge as well, trying to get home.
Yeah, actually, I think it was so January of 2018. He had kind of messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm interested in coming home and surprising people. Can you help me out with a ticket?" Kind of, and then looking into tickets, like you said, a ticket from northern Japan to Madison, Wisconsin, it was in the almost $2,000, which is about what someone like Ben would make in a month. So it's a lot of money, especially if you're coming home from overseas. So, yeah, I was actually, I pre-COVID, I flew for work all the time. So I had a lot of airline miles. So I was able to get him a ticket with miles and get him home for a visit. But not everybody has someone in their family that has a lot of airline miles sitting around. So we were fortunate that I had that ability to get him home for a trip.
Yeah, you have a really great video of Ben surprising his mom, Jen.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that moment and that experience?
Yeah. So once we kind of had all the things planned, like I was literally the only one that knew he was coming home. Like I told no one except I think the day before I told somebody at work. So we figured out when he would want to come home, and then I happened to be in Baltimore for a work trip. So I was actually able to arrange his flight so that my flight, I was flying home through Detroit. So I got his flight that would also come into Detroit from Tokyo. And then we were on the same flight from Detroit into Madison. So we didn't get in till by the time we landed and everything and got home, it was after midnight. And like nobody knew he was coming. Nobody knew he was there. So I think at this point, Emma was in Milwaukee finishing up her senior year at Marquette. So the first thing I did is I told Ben to just go wait downstairs for a minute. So I went into Matthew's room, woke him up, and I was like, hey, I need you to come help me with something. So I come downstairs, or I bring him downstairs, and of course, he's still like half asleep, and I thought he'd have this like reaction of like, wow, great to see you, and hugging and everything. And he's like, what are you doing here? So once he kind of like figured out, he's like, oh, okay, so Ben's here, that was fun. And then, so I said, Matthew, I need you to like take a video cause we're going to go wake up mom next and surprise mom. So he got out his phone, sat on the couch, took a video. So I went in to go wake up Jen at this point. I'm like, hey, can you come out in the living room? I need you to take a look at something. And she was really confused. Like, why would I be waking her up in the middle of the night to come out to the living room to take a look at something? But because she had just woken up, she thought that I was like holding my arm strange, and she thought maybe, I'd hurt myself somehow. Nothing I had planned. So I brought her out into the living room, and then she looked over and saw Ben sitting there on the chair in the living room. And then she just kind of like let out this huge gasp and then hugged him and was just laughing. And yeah, it was a great moment.
Incredible moment. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And so how long was Ben home?
I think about six or 7 days. Okay. So yeah, in that time, like we ended up surprising several people, and he got to see so many people, so many family and friends. He went back to New Glarus High School and kind of snuck into the classroom of one of his favorite teachers, and was kind of like sitting in the back, kind of like hiding. And then like his teacher didn't know he was there until like 5 or 10 minutes. And he's like, who's that kid over there? Who is that? And then he realized it was Ben. And for the rest of the class, he's told the other kids, like, talk amongst yourselves. And he and Ben just hung out and talked and caught up on what he'd been doing. So, but yeah, we got to go see family in Little Chute, Grand Chute, Waiwega, a lot of different, got to see really almost everybody. It's kind of amazing, really, if you think about it in hindsight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. And you're, through the Ben Jackson Foundation, providing that opportunity for so many other people. Again, we'll talk about that shortly here. But so Ben transitioned back. He had to get back to Japan. He was there for 7 weeks. Is that?
Yeah, I think it was about 6 or 7 weeks. And then so he was there 7 weeks, and then one morning on Friday, April 13th, I was already at work, and then just the car pulled up into the driveway, and Jen opened the door, and there's 2 Air Force officers standing there. And of course she knew pretty much what that meant immediately without them having to say anything. And then they informed her that Ben had been killed in an accident on base involving his motorcycle.
That had to be absolutely challenging, tragic, and but you had an opportunity to sit back and reflect on the fact that he was able to come home just a couple of short months before that, and I'm sure that experience is living with you forever, having him home for that 6 or 7 days.
And that was really in a lot of ways the inspiration for the foundation. Because after he died, we're just complete like reaction mode. We don't really know what to do. We're just kind of like trying to get through every day. Not really knowing what we're doing, just trying to like make it like minute by minute, basically. So we, people, we just did what we had seen other people do, right? Like, meaning wrote up an obituary, put that out there and let people know in lieu of flowers, you can donate to the Ben Jackson Memorial Fund, which at the time we had no idea what we were going to do with it. We're just like, here, this is a thing. You can give money to this and we'll figure out what to do with it later. But maybe about a month later, we were all talking, about what we wanted to do with that. And our youngest son, Matthew, said, it was really awesome that Ben was able to come home. We should do that for other people. And that's when we kind of knew, like, that's brilliant. Because every other idea we kind of kicked around just never really felt right. But this was kind of like, yeah, this is something that, we were fortunate enough to have that opportunity, and we know how hard it was for him and that he probably wouldn't have been able to do it, if it weren't for, me having the miles to get him home. So, we thought that was a really good idea. So we thought, we had thought about, scholarships, and it didn't really seem like the right thing for Ben because Ben didn't go to college, but in fact, he didn't even go to the senior awards night because why would he, right? Like, he wasn't going to get a scholarship. But we thought, people that go into the military don't often get a lot of recognition. Some high schools do a really good job of that, of just, bringing them into senior awards night, but it's pretty rare. So anyway, we wanted to provide that recognition for people going into the military from Wisconsin high schools, similar to a scholarship where once they got to a point where they were able to take leave and come home, they would have this money available to use. So that's kind of the inception of it, and how it got started was we wanted to kind of make it, we were gearing this towards seniors going into the military who maybe hadn't graduated yet. So we actually knew a few personally that had recently gone in or were about to go in. And our first couple of awards were really, it's probably just a month and a half, like early June. And we had, there were people Matthew knew. So at Matthew's high school graduation party, we gave out our first 2 awards to some local nuclearis kids.
Yeah, that's great. And you're serving a need in the military community. I don't know if there's many organizations like yours around the country that help provide those flights back home for those newly enlisted military members.
Yeah, we kind of expected to find that there were other people doing this, but we haven't. I don't think there are. At least we haven't found any yet. There are programs that are available for if you're in the military and you have a immediate family member pass away. You can get some funding to help get back home. Sometimes you can get the funding, but you have to pay it back. But there was really nothing like this that just said, hey, you're stationed far away, you're 18 years old, 19 years old, or whatever the case is. You're in a brand new environment. You're with a bunch of people you don't know. Your entire support structure that you had growing up is gone, or at least not there with you. We thought it was important that they have we never wanted money to be a reason why somebody couldn't make that trip home.
Mm-hmm. And it is a tough transition to get into the military too. And get stationed somewhere. I'm sure you probably went through some challenging times in that. Can you talk about that transition, at least in your experience?
I mean, I think my transition was probably easier in that I kind of had 4 years of ROTC to kind of like make a really gradual transition into the military, and just coming from a military family, I more or less knew what to expect. I think Ben's case is probably a lot more common. Ben basically left small town New Glarus in Wisconsin one day, and next thing you know, he's in Texas, getting yelled at by military training instructors. Just a whole different environment. And then really from that point on, everything just changed for him. I think when he first got into, just based on his letters and talking to him after the fact, when he first got into basic training, he kind of had that moment of like, what have I done? Why did I do this? But I think that's really common as well. And then when he first got to Japan, that was really tough for him. It was, again, a completely new environment. Not only are you halfway around the world physically, but you're 14 hours ahead, which means there's a very limited window of time where you can actually talk to somebody at home when you're both awake and, somebody's not working. So that also made it really difficult. So when he first got to Masao, he really, really didn't like it there. It took him quite a while to kind of acclimate to get to a point where he was really enjoying his time in Japan. But yeah, it's just for somebody, and he was older than most going into the military. I mean, he was let's see here, he would have turned 19 before graduating high school. So he was older than many, but just being that young and being that far away, and then having those kind of responsibilities, and it's a lot. And then fast forward to the last couple of years, now throw COVID on top of that, right? That's even worse, because a lot of times they not only could they not leave to go home for a while, sometimes they couldn't leave their base, or even I've talked to people that are stationed in Germany. It's like they can leave their house to go to work, and they have to go right back home, and they're really not allowed. So you have all these people like not coming home for holidays, not coming home for other events. A, because they're in the military and they can't, and B, because COVID just made it that much harder. So we like to tell people, like, imagine what your life was like in COVID. That's what the military is like without COVID. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not coming home and you're not seeing your family and you're missing holidays. Now throw COVID on top of that for someone that's like isolated and alone in an environment. And it's just really hard. And we believe that they should have the opportunity to come back once in a while, or at least once, back to that support structure that they don't have anymore. Of course, they develop new support structures, but especially when you're new, that the one that you grew up with means a lot.
Absolutely. So your initial goals when you founded the Ben Jackson Foundation was to serve the state of Wisconsin, and it sounds like you've expanded that quite a bit. Can you talk about the growth you've experienced through the last nearly 4 years, and then talk about how you've managed that growth?
Yeah. Well, so really our biggest period of growth has just taken place in the last 9 months. Everything really changed for us at the beginning of May last year. So we had a lot of support financially, a lot of donors. And our goal was to give one of these out to every person going into the military from Wisconsin. What we found was it was actually very difficult to find enough people going into the military in Wisconsin that would also contact us and apply for one of these. So for quite a while, we had more funding then we had people to help with it. So at some point, about a year ago, we started trying to figure out, what do we need to do to really reach out to more people? And then we realized that we wouldn't be able to find enough people just from Wisconsin. And we wanted to go to where the need was. I think a lot of times people, once they are planning to go into the military, they don't really get it. They don't know what it's going to be like for real. They think, okay, well, I'll get in the military. I'll have a place to live. I'll be getting paid full time. It'll be awesome. And they're like, why would I spend time on filling out an application for something I probably can't use for a year and a half, and by then I'll be fine. But we knew that wasn't the case. We knew that wasn't reality for a lot of people. So we wanted to go, where is the need? And once they get to their base, then that's when it kind of clicks for them. Like, okay, now I want to go home. And now I realize how expensive those tickets are, and that I have all these other expenses, and it's really difficult. So we contacted a couple of people that knew, that we kind of knew through Ben, or through the people we'd met after Ben died, and talked to them about, hey, how can we get the word out? So we targeted 2 specific bases and said, hey, if you know people that could benefit from this, whether they're from Wisconsin or not, have them fill this out, send us like 10 people. And then we'll see how that goes. So what actually happened was, so they sent the email out to people, and that email got forwarded and then re-forwarded to pretty much every Air Force base in the world. So I would say starting about May, like it's almost like one day, everything changed. So starting May 10th, we started, for the rest of the month, we started getting about 100 applications every day. So up until that time, we had been able to say yes to everybody that applied. And then starting at that point, now we have to figure out how are we going to deal with all these applications and figure out, which ones we can say yes to. And we had to come up with a process to deal with that, because we were just completely flooded and overwhelmed with applications, which is awesome that we're able to reach more people and help more people. But at the same time, we had to figure out, how do we pivot now and put something together that can sustain this? How do we sustain this volume?
Mm-hmm. Well, it shows you the need for that. Mm-hmm. There's so many people out there that just need that financial assistance to get home and see their family. So,
and that's actually one of the like, we always knew that need was there. We knew it. We just couldn't prove it. And then, mm-hmm. and then once we started getting 100 applications a day, then we're like, okay.
So what's the application process look like? And then what's that review process look like on your end?
So it kind of continually evolves as we grow, but basically, they can go fill out an application. They tell us, where they're from, where they're stationed, some details about, how long they've been in the military. Have they been home already? Do you already have a ticket? Do you have your leave approved? How is this going to help you? How is this going to benefit you? Our eligibility requirements are you have to be in the military less than 4 years. And then you have to be at your first permanent duty station. So we kind of review the applications. We'll look at the ones that maybe aren't eligible, let them know. And then we have a monthly selection process where we go through the applications that we've gotten in the previous month. And we kind of look at the individual situations and try to make the best decision we can. It's really it's an art, not a science. It's kind of a subjective thing. We don't want it to be a needs-based thing. We always envisioned it to be more of a thank you for serving. Here's something we can do for you. But, listening or reading some of the applications and seeing the stories, there's a lot of tough situations out there, and it's really actually I hate to say it, but it's a heartbreaking process to go through and read those applications, because we get so many, and right now we're able to say yes to maybe 10 to 12 every month. And just this past month was a bit extreme. It was our biggest, I want to say our second biggest month yet, but we had 1,100 applications.
Wow.
Actually, it was closer to 1,200. But so now we have a committee that's going through those, and we have to pick out 10 or 12. Wow. And so there's this, you want to say yes to everybody, and there's so many people that really, really deserve it and really need it. So it's hard. It's hard to say. It's hard to tell people, I'm sorry, we can't offer this to you. But on the other hand, the people that we are able to help, it means the world of difference to them.
Absolutely. Can you talk about some of the success stories you had with this?
Sure. So I would say a few stand out. One, there we had a Marine that was in Okinawa. He had this. He was one of the. He had the award kind of in his back pocket that he could use for probably 2 years. And then he had always planned to come home this past December. But then he found out that his grandfather was not doing well and went into hospice. So he came home over the summer instead. So he got to come home and spend a couple of days with his grandfather in hospice before he passed away. And we met him after that and gave him his check. And he told us, like if it wasn't for this, I never would have come home and got to spend that time with him. Because again, coming from Japan, that's, pretty expensive ticket. So, I mean, we felt it was obviously grateful that we were able to help him out, and he was able to spend that time with his grandfather before he passed. Another situation that comes to mind, last summer, we became aware, we had applications from 2 airmen who were married to each other, but they were stationed in different bases, and they were trying to get home because her mother was in the hospital from COVID and ended up, I believe, passing away. But we were able to help them out, get them back to Texas. And then, we've had other situations where family members, cousins or grandparents have passed away. And we do have a separate process where if there's an emergent situation, and someone from their chain of command reaches out to us, we can kind of expedite that application. We actually had a donor that was a very generous donor who gave us $5,000 to establish an emergency fund that we're able to help people like that in situations where, it can't wait till next month review board. Just some really other inspiring, I'd like to just share a couple other kind of inspiring things, or really things that make you think. We've had at least one person say, we gave her an award for her to come home. And she said, I think it was a him, but he said, I would thank you so much. I'd really like to give this to someone else who applied and didn't get it. He needs it more. So we were able to do that, and get someone else home, which was amazing. And then just a couple of comments that we've got in applications. Like, there's so many just incredible comments. One of them said, I didn't know this existed. I've never heard of anything like this. This makes us feel loved. And then someone else, similar concept, but it's, just the fact that this exists out there just makes us feel like we're not forgotten. So those are really some humbling moments to read, just like, and these are people that are just like, even if I don't get this award, like somebody deserving will, and I appreciate that. And then, just one other comment I wanted to share is probably the one that like stuck with me a lot because of what we talked about before about not being able to find people to help until, because they don't realize their situation until they get somewhere, right? So one particular quote said, this person wrote, "I didn't fully understand the importance of family and home until I couldn't go back." And that really kind of like sums up, why we're here.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever just sit back and reflect on the impact that you make? I know with the increase in volume, it's probably a lot more work than you were doing initially. You ever just sit back and reflect on the impact that you're making on these military members and families?
I try to, yeah. I try to, sometimes I'll take time and just kind of like read through the applications that are coming in as they come in. Early on, somebody on our board of directors said, even if we help one person, that'll be a huge success. And we've definitely done that. We've given out, this point, I think it is, as of today, we've given out 224 awards, and that represents $157,000 in our 3.5 year existence.
Wow.
So I never really thought we'd be where we were now. But I like to think we're just getting started. In terms of, reflecting, you're right. It's hard sometimes to reflect on, to take that time, to really reflect on what this means to, and who it makes a difference for. And sometimes we have to force ourselves to think about the people we're able to say yes to more than the people we're not able to help. But it's the people that we're have to say no to kind of drives us to do more and raise more money so we can say yes to more people.
Where can we find more information about the Ben Jackson Foundation?
Well, a few different places. So you can go to our website. That's benjacksonfoundation.org. And then we also are pretty active on Facebook and Instagram. So you can find us there. So Facebook and Instagram is where you'll see information about a lot of the people that have been able to come home. So we try to post one or two photos of people who received a ticket home and were able to make a trip home there. So you can kind of see, the impact that we're making there. Those are probably the best places to learn about us and kind of find our presence.
Yeah, and if our listeners are interested in applying or supporting through donations, how can they do that?
So to make donations, you can go to benjacksonfoundation.org/donate. And then you can make a one-time donation, or even better, you can make a recurring monthly donation. We have some people that are have a recurring donation that the monthly amount they give means that, over the course of a year, somebody, that makes somebody come home, right? Like their monthly donations total up to $500 for the year. And that lets us be able to say yes to one more person. And then a lot of people will do Facebook fundraisers for us for their birthdays. So that's another good way. We do have some merch online on our website that you can buy. We try to get out and do some events in the area as well. So, and we'll put those on Facebook to let people know, when we're going to be at places and where those are going to be.
Yeah, you're doing some incredibly inspiring work. I'm just so impressed with everything you've done. You've taken a tragic situation and turned it into an incredible amount of good. So really appreciate everything you're doing for military members and families. and just excited to see what the future is for Ben Jackson Foundation.
I definitely want to mention, and this is a very important thing. We have a lot of people that do a lot for the foundation. We're entirely volunteer based. So aside from me, so is my wife. Our family has done a lot in terms of supporting this, either through donations or pitching in to do things here and there. We have a board of directors that has really been helpful. We just had added 2 more people to that board. That one of this is a spouse of an active duty military member, and the other just retired after 30 years in the Air Force. We have volunteers that help us keep our financial things in order. We have my sister-in-law, Emily, who's really been the longest term volunteer. She's done so much to help us with our marketing and social media and really getting us to a point where we are today. Just a lot of people behind the scenes that you don't hear about that really make this a success. And I can't say enough about Emily. There are probably times where, if it wasn't for Emily, I might have given up, but she really kept me going a lot of times, just knowing that someone was there that, held the same drive to make this what it is. And I just can't say enough about the people that do everything behind the scenes. It's amazing.
All right. So I got 3 rapid fire questions for you and then 2 final questions to wrap up our conversation. All right. So these rapid fire questions are about the state of Wisconsin. And so what is your favorite restaurant in Wisconsin?
Probably have to be the Glarner Stube in the Glares. My wife and I were just there for dinner last night.
Nice. Yep. I love it there. What is your favorite event in Wisconsin?
Favorite event in Wisconsin? Me personally, I really going to, I don't know if I'd call it an event, but going to Packers games. Or went with Matthew to the Packers game on Christmas Day this year, and don't get there every year, but it's always a good time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last one. Where's your favorite place to hang out in Wisconsin?
Honestly, at my house or a family member's house. Just being with other I'm definitely more of a homebody, but like having people at our house or visiting family at their houses. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, so I have 2 final questions here for you. I know you've traveled across the country, across the globe, but how has Wisconsin helped shape you into who you are?
I think that's a really tough question. Wisconsin's so much a part of my identity. Before, when I said I was growing up in high school, I couldn't really wait to leave, and then I did. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I really want to come back to Wisconsin now. So many of the things about Wisconsin that I didn't appreciate then, I appreciate now. I just think it has a really, I just really appreciate, the culture and the things that other people make fun of us for, like being cheeseheads or our accent or whatever the case is. I just really embrace that. I don't really see us ever leaving Wisconsin at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Last question for you, and you can tailor this towards yourself or the Ben Jackson Foundation, however you see fit. When all is said and done, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, I think in terms of legacy, it's really important to me that Ben is remembered. So I think through this foundation, I want to make sure that everything we do as a foundation is remembered in such a way that Ben would be proud of it. He was always interested in, helping other people, however that was. looked out for others. And that's what I want. I want Ben to be known and remembered through the work of our foundation as a good representation of how he was as a person. So and just on top of that, we found out a lot about so many stories about Ben from other people that served with him in the Air Force after he died. And he just really kind of inspired me to be more like him. So that's how I want the foundation seen and how I want Ben remembered.
Yeah, it sounds like Ben left an incredible legacy behind, and you're serving that legacy really well through the foundation. So really appreciate everything you did, and I appreciate you joining Wisco Legacy to talk about your journey through this trying time, and you're able to take that and just make an incredible impact in the military community.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. It was really awesome to be here and get to tell everyone about Ben and the foundation and what we do and some of the great people that are serving our country in the military. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining Wisco Legacy.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Larry, for joining Wisco Legacy. You, your family, and the board of directors are doing an incredible service to these military members and families. If you're interested in helping out in any way, head out to benjacksonfoundation.org. There's a donate button there. If you know somebody who could benefit from this award, there's an apply button out there as well. So go out and have people apply for this and really help support the Ben Jackson Foundation as much as you can. They are doing some incredible work in this area, and just really appreciate everything that they're doing for these military members and families. And if you enjoy this podcast, please head out to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and follow us at Wisco Legacy. If you enjoy this podcast, head out to Apple Podcast and rate and review us out there. That helps us get up higher in the rankings on Apple Podcast. And hit subscribe wherever you listen. That would mean the world to me. So thank you for tuning in to episode 20 of Wisco Legacy.